Hey guys, welcome back to Cosmic Road. This is Jack with Cosmic Road. I talk about UFOs and the paranormal. Please hit like, please subscribe, and hit the bell to be notified of future videos. And comment as I'm going through this. So this is awesome. Thank you for joining me live. I want to talk today about the recent episode of Weaponized with Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp, where they had a special guest, John Gutierrez, if I'm saying that right, who is a Navy commander, a pilot, helicopter pilot. And anyway, a really cool episode. They had some call-in guests that were witnesses to the UFO swarms. And anyway, I'm letting a few people join me before I get too far into it. But it was a great episode of Weaponized. Their second episode, I think it dropped at like midnight their time, which was 1 o'clock my time. So I watched it this morning, but really cool episode. And talking more about the UFO swarms that the people in charge of the government or the Arrow and the Pentagon have been trying to debunk. Bray and Moultrie, infamously said it was a drone, or no, excuse me, they said the glowing green pyramids was a bouquet effect, which is, nonsense. And multiple witnesses, multiple sensor data, not a pyramid. And specifically in this episode, they were talking about the UFO swarms that seemed to be more of the orb swarms that occurred in 2019 over one particular battle group. And there were, a dozen or more of these strange craft that were swarming and even possibly harassing this battle group at sea. And there's many witnesses. There's multiple sensor data. There's radar. There's infrared. There's video. There's witness accounts. So it's really hard to dispute this amazing encounter. And I can't wait to get even more details about that to come, because this is really sensational. In many ways, this is bigger than the Nimitz incident from 2004, because we do have all the sensor data and all these witnesses coming forward. And there were so many craft. Of course, in all fairness, there were many craft in the Nimitz incident too. The Tic Tac is the famous craft, of course, but it was a week-long event where over potentially 100 or more of these objects were seen on the radar, not necessarily eyewitness accounts. But this is a fantastic account. So let's go over it. Yeah, get in here. That's right. That's right. If you're just joining me, this is joining us. This is Jack with Cosmic Road. I talk about UFOs and the paranormal. Please hit like and subscribe. And we're going to talk about the amazing encounter reported by George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell. And they had a really great guest on their show last night, John Gutierrez, and some call-in witnesses of the actual encounter. So let's just get into it. This is from an article from Liberation Times talking about it. It's a good summary of the episode. And it goes into some other stuff too. I have a link to it in the description. UFOs harassed U.S. warships in 2019, and new eyewitnesses contradict Pentagon's unmanned aerial systems label. Wiltz claiming one object shot down beam of light, which turned night sky bright as day. And in fact, as we get into it, you'll see there's actually two bright beams of light. Excuse me. This is an article written by Christopher Sharp. UFOs which harassed U.S. Navy warships in July 2019 were inadequately labeled as unmanned aerial systems, according to eyewitnesses involved in the series of incidents. Not inadequately labeled. I wouldn't. That's not how I would phrase it. They lied. They up and lied. They tried to downplay the incident, try to suppress public's interest and knowledge of the incident, because they don't want people talking about it. Anyway, let's get into it. One witness serving on board USS Omaha, whose responsibility was to designate the objects, told Liberation Times the classification of UAS, that's the unmanned aerial systems, the drones, is now inappropriate because it was never confirmed. The pushback against the current Pentagon line and other extraordinary new revelations were detailed by active duty Navy personnel on Weaponized, a new podcast hosted by investigative journalists Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp. John Gutierrez, an active duty Navy commander, spoke about the incidents, representing his own personal views, not speaking for or on behalf of the U.S. Navy, of course. And he elaborated on the UFO's general categorization as UAS or drones, telling Corbell and Knapp just because they are calling it that doesn't mean that's what they are. Yeah, of course. Just speaking about UFOs in general, which are witnessed by naval aviators on a daily basis, Gutierrez says it's still a big mystery. We don't know what this stuff is. And that's amazing that, they are seeing these things daily. That was the case back in, was it 2016 and 2017? The incidents where we got the gimbal footage from and the go fast footage from the USS Roosevelt and the fleet from the Roosevelt. Ryan Graves and other pilots were seeing these things almost daily. And I think it was Ryan Graves that almost collided with one. There was the interesting cube within a sphere, or was it a sphere within a cube? Really crazy ship. Let's see. Continuing, an anonymous eyewitness who served on board the USS Paul Hamilton during the events testified on audio to Corbell for the show. The eyewitness disputed claims that a Hong Kong registered cargo vessel named the Bass Strait was responsible. Yeah, because that's what they tried to pawn it off as, right? Yeah. So the Bass Strait crew did deny they were the source, and they also never landed or launched them. Now, would I trust Chinese, crew that was spying on us potentially to tell the truth about that? No, I don't. So just, full disclosure. He later added, we never saw them land or take off the Bass Strait. And that's the critical thing, because they were watching this ship and they didn't see any activity there. So this wasn't coming from there. A second anonymous eyewitness from the USS Paul Hamilton testified to Corbell via audio, explaining how the objects would always come from the west, excuse me, despite there being no landmass or any other apparent flight platform. And unlike normal drones, the eyewitness explained they would depart on different bearings that they would come in from. Yeah, Corbell explained how the objects seemed to appear from nowhere, according to witnesses, and were seen diving into the water, as captured in one video released by Corbell in May 2021, which shows a hovering spherical object observed by sailors from USS Omaha before suddenly submerging. And yeah, we're all familiar with that, orb, or whatever you want to call it, that gradually kind of slowly goes into the water. Just kind of taking its time, no big hurry. Was it putting on a show? Was this whole thing to put on a show? Because I do want to get into that. What is the reasoning behind this? Because we're talking about apparently multiple swarms of craft over multiple fleets. We know of two in particular, this Omaha incident, and also those apparently were the orb-like objects. And then there's also the glowing green pyramids. Of course, they probably weren't glowing in green visually, but that's the famous footage, is the glowing green pyramids. And I think there were 3 of those craft. So speaking about the unconventional behavior and capabilities of the objects, Gutierrez described how sailors from the USS Russell were following one of the UFOs as it traveled around the ship before it just dramatically just shot straight up into the air. Yeah, without making any sound, he says. Remarkably, the first eyewitness from the USS Paul Hamilton described how one UFO shot down a bright white beam of light, illuminating the ship for 2 seconds. It went from pitch black to very illuminated very quickly. Yeah, can you imagine being on that ship at night with UFOs swarming around, and all of a sudden it just boom lights up, and you're just shocked, and all the hairs stand up on your arms and your head, and there's just this bright encompassing light for 2 seconds, and then it goes off and it's dark again. Can you imagine how disorienting and crazy that would be? Yeah. He described the event as jarring and shocking. Gutierrez, who has spoken with sailors from USS Paul Hamilton, explained how crew members told him it was bright as day due to the strength of the beam. And why did they do that? Why did they shine this bright light down? Again, is this a display? Were they actually doing something? Were they observing? Were they trying to get information or intelligence? So I do want to get into that. Alarmingly, Gutierrez described a separate event witnessed by crew members serving on board a landing helicopter dock, a large multi-purpose amphibious assault ship, where an apparent UFO illuminated the whole ship with a light. So this is a separate event. Sailors that I've spoken to personally talk about being out on deployment in the middle of the night. They're standing on bridge watch, and all of a sudden on the horizon, they see a light kind of flicker on and all of a sudden start tracking towards the ship. And then, as soon as they lose sight of the object over the ship, or presumably directly overhead of the ship, all of a sudden it casts this light, which is so bright and so blinding that they're disoriented within the bridge of the ship. So even the people on the bridge of the ship were disoriented by this object. I mean, that sounds dangerous, honestly. I mean, I don't want to be one of the people that are pushing fear into this topic, but you have to call it what it is, and that does sound alarming and dangerous to potentially be blinding the captain and the navigators or whoever was on the bridge. And anyway, if you're just joining me, this is Jack with Cosmic Road talking about the UFO swarms over the USS Omaha and other ships. In 2019, Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp did an episode about that last night on their podcast, Weaponized. And it's just a fascinating topic, just an amazing incident that we have a lot of corroborative data for. Visual, radar, infrared, many witnesses, just an incredible account. And I just can't tell you how fascinating I am by this subject and by this particular incident. And so if you're enjoying this and if you're getting something out of this, please consider hitting the like button, sharing this video, and subscribing. Please hit the subscribe button and the bell to be to see future videos, and please consider supporting this channel by leaving a tip in the tip jar with the super thanks or the super chat. That'd be awesome. So really appreciated. That's what keeps this channel going. Just to read some of your comments. Bearded Jedi says, "What's up, man? Yeah. I've just been set outside with my laser and got an amazing response. I'm reading from the Bearded Jedi. Whatever it is went overhead, did a flash, then continued on. It's absolutely fascinating to witness myself. Yeah. Oh, cool. Can't wait to hear what they said. Yeah. Man, I would love to hear more about that incident. Are you an experiencer? Do you regularly see these things, Bearded Jedi? Matthew says, thanks for the content, Jack. Watching all your videos from Spain. All right, cool, man. Glad to see some people from Spain. I've always wanted to go to Spain. I've had a fascination with Spain for a long time, and I've always wanted to check it out. All right, we'll continue with the article. Let's see. Yeah, as soon as they lose sight of the object over the ship, or presumably directly overhead of the ship, all of a sudden it casts this light, which is so bright and so blinding that they're disoriented within the bridge of the ship. Liberation Times has since learned that the ship involved was a USS Kearsarge. I'm totally mispronouncing that. Kearsarge. In testimony obtained by Corbell and heard by Liberation Times, one sailor on board the ship described the shocking incident in his own words. It was like somebody turned on a light, but it was like an LED light that changes colors, and it was light as day, but just green. This green light encompassed the bridge of the ship of the USS Kearsarge, or however you say that. He says, so that was for about 5 or 7 seconds, and then it just went away. The sky, the horizon, everywhere around us was showered in a green light. So that's interesting. That's distinct from the other event with the Omaha and that particular fleet. That wasn't green. That seemed to be more of a white light. And this is a green light. Do the different colored lights have meanings? Are different technologies involved? Were they about something different? Were they scanning the ship in a different way? Or, what does that mean? Does it have any significance at all? Gutierrez recalls another witness telling him that it was so bright that she couldn't see her hands in front of her face. Wow. I mean, that's bright. Can you imagine being blinded by light so brightly, so bright that you can't see your hands? That's nuts. That's nuts. It does sound dangerous, honestly. Again, not to be an alarmist or fearmonger, but that does seem alarming. It seems like it could cause damage to your eyes, or and there's so many cases that people have received radiation burns from contact events. So I worry about that when I hear about that kind of case. Speaking about the threat posed by unknown objects with apparent extraordinary capabilities, Gutierrez, who is a U.S. Navy helicopter pilot and aviation safety officer, believes they can endanger lives, partly due to the sheer frequency of encounters which continue up to this day. There's a real concern out there, he says. We've got guys in the air coming across things which we don't know what they are, and the risk for a midair incident, or God forbid, an actual midair collision, it's there. Well, according to the research by Preston Dennett, who did an excellent video compiling a whole list of collisions between UFOs and man-made vehicles, from planes, trains to automobiles. I mean, isn't that crazy that UFOs have collided with cars? I mean, how does that happen? But if you want to know, watch that Preston Dennett video, and he'll walk you through each case. So yeah, they do collide, and the Ryan Graves incident shows that it is a potential air hazard for the Navy jet pilots. Let's see. Out of the 366 new UFO reports, the 2022 annual report on UAP released on 12 January 2023, a few months late, by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, revealed that 26 had been characterized as unmanned aircraft systems. That's right. So some 26 of those new 366 cases were dismissed as drones, but they seem to like to classify UFOs as drones. I mean, I think that's a good shorthand when the experiences are going on. Lou Elizondo has talked about that, but later on, when they want to debunk these incidents, they continue with that. So, oh yeah, it's just a drone, just a Chinese drone. It's not taking off from anywhere that we can see or going anywhere that we can see, but somehow it must be a Chinese drone, even though it's doing these fantastic maneuvers that no drone could possibly do. However, following the new revelations about the July 2019 incidents, such categorizations may now come under some doubt. Absolutely. Jeremy Corbell commented to the Times, I have been speaking for years with crews and various actors involved in the July 2019 UFO swarms over our Navy warships, and many eyewitnesses who were actually there and are highly trained to identify modern drones and technologies testify to me with emphasis that these were not traditional units from our or any other nation known to us, and were unidentified anomalous phenomena due to the extraordinary capabilities they demonstrated. They were staying aloft for hours, undertaking unconventional maneuvers, and were able to fly in a stable fashion despite the lack of traditional flight control surfaces while enduring high winds out at sea. Furthermore, they were observed diving into the ocean without making a splash. Numerous Navy officers have confirmed to me that they seemed to just appear. There is so much. There's much more that I can now report on this event series and others like it, such as the blinding bright lights observed during these events. Yeah, what are those about? Are they just showing off? Or are those big bright lights actually doing something? Are they functional in some way? He says the core. Jeremy Corbell says the core of the issue about these 2019 UFO swarms that brazenly engaged our military assets on our home turf is that we still do not know origin, capability, operator, or intent. This is a problem beyond safety of flight or near misses. This is a national security issue and an intelligence failure due to the persistent stigma surrounding the UFO reality, and investigations have not been as effective as they should be. Yeah, well, I mean, how can they if they're trying to debunk these things as drones and bouquet effects? It's ridiculous. Let's see, John Ramirez on the channel, not the CIA officer, says, to me, it seemed to start to become invisible before splashing down. Yeah, it does kind of blink out there, doesn't it? It's kind of hard to tell. Kind of hard to tell if it's going to be below the wave line or, into the waves, or if it's actually kind of blinking out. Um, Bearded Jedi says, only when I sit outside with my laser and the sky is clear. He's talking about his own interactions with the UFOs. And that's amazing. So they basically, it sounds like they come to you when you're ready to see them. That's amazing. Are could you be an experiencer and, the more up close and personal sense of the word? Do have missing time or any of that kind of stuff? Bearded Jedi says, apparently the oceans are 80% unexplored, and maybe these beings are in our waters. Their waters, maybe. Yeah, I mean, it could be their waters. It could be theirs. That we could be on their planet. It is totally possible. Raz says, could you get Lady Gaga on? She was at the Gary Nolan lectures on non-human genetics. Yeah, I heard about that. I heard about that. Very cool. I'm not super familiar with Lady Gaga. That's past my era of music. I'm a rock and roll guy. So I'm not big on Lady Gaga, but it's awesome that she was there, and I can't wait to see what she says about this, and I'm sure she'll be able to promote the issue and the subject more. I did see her in that movie on Gucci. Pretty good movie, kind of slow but kind of good. But she was one of the main characters, one of the main actors, and she did a good job. That's really all I know her from. I'm not familiar with her music at all. Yeah, I'm sure I've heard it, but I don't know any of her songs. But I know that she's a colorful and interesting figure, and it doesn't surprise me at all that she's interested in this topic. Yeah, as far as getting her on the show, hey, why not? Why not? I mean, people like Lou Elizondo have been on channels smaller than mine. So, I mean, who knows, right? I would like to start doing interviews with people. So, and I would love to, interact with Lou or Lady Gaga or any of these guys. Or any of you guys, if you want to share your own experiences, if you're experiencers, I would love to hear from you. Just email me. I need to include that in my thing, but it's my email is mysteryroadchannel@gmail.com. Again, that's mysteryroadchannel@gmail.com. Mystery Road was my original name for this channel. Before I thought Cosmic Road was better, and also there was another Mystery Road. But yeah, so if you're an experiencer and want to share your experiences, or you have some insight into the phenomenon, let me know. If you're if you work for Lockheed Martin or something, I'd love to have your take. So, yeah, just to continue with your article. Jeremy Corbell says, no matter where UFOs are from, it is now openly admitted by our Department of Defense in their own briefings that UFOs are appearing with an increased frequency worldwide. So that is interesting, and that's something that I've heard a lot lately, is that that they are increasing in frequency, their appearances. Now, is that true? I mean, is that the case? Or are our sensors just better now and we can detect them more? Or is it perhaps a little bit of both, that as we've become more able to detect them and we're reporting on these things more, the public awareness has increased. And so their appearances have also increased. I think Jacques Ballet said it was the phenomenon was kind of a barometer of our consciousness. So could that be what is going on? I mean, fascinating to consider. I don't know what that implies or what that means about the nature of the phenomenon, but it is super fascinating to consider. But it could also simply mean they are warming up the public towards eventual disclosure, and I think that that is very possible. In fact, I think that maybe where we're headed. I don't know how soon that's going to happen. They may want this to kind of matriculate out into the public for a few years and or decades even, and for the general public to become okay with this topic before having major UFO flyovers of major cities during the daytime, doing some fancy shows and light shows and stuff like that. And but Jeremy says, so it's time to acknowledge the UFO problem, and I am hopeful that Arrow and its stakeholders will dedicate robust resources to this enduring mystery on behalf of the American and global public. Within the new National Defense Authorization Act, legislation recently signed into law by President Joe Biden, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, director of the U.S. government's new UFO office, Arrow, must create a historic report for Congress which details any efforts to obfuscate, manipulate public opinion, hide, or otherwise provide incorrect, unclassified, or classified information about unidentified anomalous phenomena or related activities. Yeah, good luck with that. I mean, I would love it if you could hold these turkeys accountable for obfuscating and manipulating public opinion and all that. But guess what? They're still doing it. I mean, how can you hold anybody accountable when they're still doing it? When they're still calling the flying pyramids a bouquet effect, and they're calling these orb swarms over U.S. warships Chinese drones. I mean, really, how can they possibly? And yeah, I mean, yeah, it's ridiculous. It's sad, but that is the case. They are still lying. They are still obfuscating. They are still suppressing the truth and continuing to brainwash the public, basically, just as they have for the last 70 plus years. Yeah, they've been doing this for a long time, and I'm not seeing any signs of them stopping. I was really hoping that Arrow would be it. This would be now it's time to get real and open up to the public. Okay, maybe we can't go into the really deep stuff. We're not going to talk about alien abductions, until way later, but at least we can start being honest that there is a legitimate phenomenon. It's not a bouquet effect. It's not a Chinese drone. But Sean Kirkpatrick and Bray and Moultrie have shown that they are not interested in disclosing the truth to the public. They are going to continue to downplay this and suppress it, and to continue to gaslight and brainwash the public. But that is cute that the language forming Arrow specifically says they're supposed to identify the brainwashers and the manipulators of public opinion. But I mean it's I think that language was put in there sincerely, and it was probably Chris Mellon probably had a hand in that, just as he had a hand in the language forming the UAP task force. And so I think that that's awesome. And if they would stick to the language forming the organization, they could really have something special, and the public could really have something special. I don't see that happening in the near future. Sean Kirkpatrick has not impressed me as a truth teller or somebody interested in telling the truth to the public. Otherwise, he wouldn't have lied openly and brazenly in the UAP report. I mean, they didn't say much in the report, but what they did say was lies. There's no collisions. We know that's a lie. There's no health effects. We know that's a lie. I mean, Gary Nolan has talked about the health effects that he has been shown from some of these encounters, some of these recent encounters. So they have access to those records. and they are openly lying to the public about it. So it's just such BS, such BS. This new witness testimony seems to contradict the Pentagon's current line on the events. The article goes on. Recently heard in May 2022 at a congressional hearing on UFOs, referencing a video of what has been described in an intelligence brief. Oh, and by the way, if you're just joining me, this is Jack with Cosmic Road talking about the UFO swarms over the USS Omaha and other ships. As described by Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp. They just had a really great episode of Weaponized, their new podcast. And they had a special guest, John Gutierrez, and they had some call-ins from people who were actually witnesses to some of these events. So just a great show, and I'm just talking about it and getting your thoughts on it and giving you my own thoughts about it. So please hit like, please subscribe, consider supporting the channel by leaving a super chat. That'd be super awesome. That really keeps this channel going, and I really appreciate it. But yeah, so referencing a video of what has been described in an intelligence briefing as a UAS that appeared triangular by angle of observation, buzzing USS Russell, Deputy Director of National Intelligence Scott Bray told the House Intelligence Counterterrorism, Counterintelligence, and Counterproliferation Subcommittee that the working hypothesis was the objects were some type of drone, some type of unmanned aerial system. Following Bray's comments, Pentagon spokesperson Susan Goff, I've heard it may be Goff, is that correct? That it rhymes with cough, provided a more definitive statement referencing both initial categorizations and identification following a subsequent evaluation. The objects cited were initially classified as unidentified, as noted in the May 17th, 2022 testimony by Navy and DoD officials before the House of Representatives Intelligence, subcommittee. Subsequent evaluation by the Department of Defense's UAP task force resulted in the objects being identified as UAS. And that is BS. So, so she lies, they lies. It's just so disheartening to see what has happened to Aero and the UAP task force. And, I'm hoping that, the part of me that wants to be positive thinks that, well, they have to arrange the furniture at Aero. They've got to put up their plants. They got to arrange their, chairs. They got to put their file cabinets in place. And, furthermore, they've got to start briefing Congress. They have already begun briefing Congress and start getting the Congress people up to date on what is going on. And maybe once that happens down the line, once they have all their ducks in a row, then they can make a plan for disclosure and they can gradually start releasing stuff. So I hope that's what's going on. I hope that's what happens. But if that is the case, why are they openly lying to us already? That's talk about starting off on the wrong foot. So I'm not encouraged that that optimistic scenario is the case. I hope I'm wrong, and time will tell. Well, let's see. Let me go through your comments. Let's see. Did you really say Planes, Trains, and Automobiles? Yeah, yeah, that is a good movie. I love that movie. Let's see. If you're flying and all of a sudden blinded, that's a dangerous thing. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. New Christensen says, hey, here from Denmark. Oh, awesome. I've got a good friend from Denmark. Very cool. Good to have you here. I've got somebody from Spain and somebody from Denmark. That's awesome. Let me know if you're outside of America. I want to hear from you guys. And what time is it in Denmark? It's like 2:00 here. Bearded Jedi says, oh yeah, I don't know, man, if I'm an experiencer. All I know is I sat outside, I took a chance and thought, I wonder, and got results. Had a lot of world-ending dreams after I started seeing the flashes. A drone, nuclear bomb, dreams, who knows? Whoa, man, that sounds alarming. Do you think that was just a dream, or do you think you were being sent some sort of message by the beings? Is that a communication going on, or was that just a dream? Because I'd be really interested to know. Let's see. Am I trying to copy Linda Moulton Howe's theme with having two cats come on the stream for views? Yeah, I'm trying. If they'll accommodate me, nobody's here. I've got two chairs either side of me. Then sometimes Bax likes to hang back there, but he's not here at the moment. So but that probably would increase views. I should probably kidnap one of them and force them to hang out with me during the live stream. Good idea. Good idea. I should have some like kitty treats over here to lure them over here. Let's see. But yeah, I love Linda Moulton Howe. I haven't seen this week's show though. Has anybody, or I guess it was the last week's show. I know she was talking about cattle mutilations, which is something she talks about a lot. And somebody was just asking me about that earlier today. What is the cause of cattle mutilations? What is the cause of cattle mutilations? I just shared two theories about that. One is that the gray aliens, several experiencers have reported when they've had their memories recovered, seeing the aliens bathe in vats. Not really bathing, but that's where they take their sustenance. There's like a secret room where people aren't supposed to go in, the contactees, but every now and then they take a peek into those secret rooms, and they have seen the aliens dipping themselves in the vats of fluid. And the theory is that that is how they take their sustenance, is through their skin, not through their mouths. And the cattle blood could be one of these substances or component of the substances that they bathe in, because it has a lot of nutrients. So possible, if that's the case, what are they doing with the organs that they harvest? Maybe they ground up and in the fluid. Another theory is they are used in vitro fertilization of hybrid babies. Because apparently the bovine blood is something that humans use in that process. So why not something to do with the hemoglobin? So why not aliens? And there's various other theories too. Those are the two that come to the top of my head right now. Hey Rick, Greg says, I've walked out my front door at around 11 p.m. and have looked to a certain part of the sky and got flashed by an unknown UFO that isn't the only time either. Wow. He says, I've been flashed multiple times on different nights. That's amazing. That's amazing. So yeah, so you may be somebody that they want to interact with. That's really cool. I've seen one, maybe two UFOs. Well, I had one encounter, I should say. It was between 1 and 3 different ships. I'm not sure which. And I may have had one other encounter as well. That one happened so quickly. It was just like, I was driving down a rural country road and I saw this light streak down right by the road and into the ground, like without slowing down or anything. And it was, I don't think I was meant to see it. Like the second time I was definitely meant to see it. But the first time when it was like that, I mean, it was like a quarter of a second. So I can't really say for sure that was that actually, could have been my mind playing tricks or something, but I think that did happen. I think I saw what I think I saw, but if that's true, then these things can go into the ground as fast as a bolt of lightning without, being blown into bits. So yeah, I mean, if that, yeah, it could be. It wasn't a reflection. I could actually see the object in the air above the road. It was like, if you've ever seen like war footage and you see somebody firing a gun and for just like one frame, you can see the bullet. It was kind of like that quick. I mean, it was just super quick. And then the second time just happened a few months ago, driving home from the Renaissance Festival with my wife, and looked up and I saw this object, luminous white object. It went like that. It appeared like this, and then it moved down like that and disappeared very quickly, moving in a quick line. And then, I directed my attention up there. I started to do some CE5. But I don't know if that was really necessary because almost instantly it reappeared again, or else a different object appeared going that way, a shorter line than the first line, forming a cross, a perfect Christian cross in the sky. And when I got home, I went out in the backyard and I said, "Did that really happen? Can you confirm that happened?" And a single light blinked on slowly and off and vanished. I mean, just vanished. It didn't streak off. So it was really interesting because I had been reading a lot of, I had read the two Dolores Cannon books on Jesus at that point, and some other interesting material related to that about the Essenes and Jesus. And so that was on my mind. You know, I'm not a Christian. I've been an atheist all my life until I started experiencing the metaphysical, and that changed me. You know, I absolutely believe, and it's awesome, and I love it. I would love to understand it, and I think about it a lot. I study it a lot, and so I was studying it and researching that aspect of it when that even happened. So it was clearly interacting with my consciousness. My wife did not see it. So I think that's significant. I doubt anybody else would have seen it because it seemed to have been meant just for me. Because again, it seemed to be interacting with my consciousness. But I haven't seen any since then. I've gone out in the backyard many times and asked them to show themselves. You know, no dice. But anyway, but yeah, I don't know if that was a nuts and bolts craft or if that was something more metaphysical, because all of my experiences so far have been metaphysical. So this could have simply been another one of those, or the phenomenon manifesting in that particular way. I have no idea. I have no idea. Let's see. Raz says more cats on stream is important for disclosure. Yeah, right. Yeah, Baxter, get in here. Let's see. And what the atomic? Yeah, no, that's not what the Atomic Sea is about. But the Atomic Sea, one of my novels, is about extra dimensional beings. That does play a part in it, a big part of it. It's a big adventure, sci-fi, fantasy, steampunk. Has elements of Lovecraftian horror and other stuff. Big adventure in another world. Yeah, check it out if you want to. Let's see. Did you read it? Was that volume one? That is volume one, but there's 5 volumes in the main series. Let's see. Raz says, as long as you didn't get flashed by a gremlin. What's a gremlin? I mean, I know the little green guys in the movies. Super Crazy Movie Geek says, do you think we will see witness testify in congressional public hearings this year regarding reverse engineering legacy programs? Wow. Well, man, I sure hope so. I sure hope that Arrow steps up its game and Sean Kirkpatrick starts being more forthcoming with the American people, because we deserve it. We deserve answers after all this time. This is ridiculous. They've been lying to the American people for 70 years. And sadly, Sean Kirkpatrick seems like he is continuing that tradition. If you're just joining me, this is Jack with Cosmic Road, doing an episode talking about the UFO swarms over the U.S. battle groups in 2019. Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp released a series of videos, 2 showing, I think, the infrared cameras of these objects. One was the glowing pyramid. One was the orb descending into the water. There's also been radar footage released. We have witness testimony. We have a visual camera footage that's been released of these objects. And now we have some witnesses that he brought on his show, one in person and a couple of call-ins, talking about these amazing encounters where we have swarms of UFOs over these warships. Now, I do want to talk about the reason behind the swarms. I did want to get into that. So let's talk about that for a minute. So, all right. So in 1952, there was the UFO flyover of Washington, D.C. And I think I want to do a special episode about that because it's such an amazing event. Many of you will be familiar with that event. Really, really a crazy encounter or event. And in 1954, President Eisenhower is said to have met with the beings. So, are those two things related? Did the UFO fly over Washington, D.C., set certain wheels in motion that led to the meeting between Eisenhower and the beings? I used to be really on the fence about the whole Eisenhower thing, but I've done several videos recently showing some different witnesses and evidence for that meeting. And I think I've seen enough evidence at this time to convince me that it did happen, most likely. There are various versions of that event. One that he met with one race of beings, one that he met with three races of beings, one that he accepted a deal from two of them and rejected a deal from the third. There are different versions of the story about which one he rejected. Some say he rejected the deal with the Pleiadians or the Nordics, who wanted us to disarm with our nuclear weapons, and he refused to do that. And another that he refused a deal with the Greys because he didn't want alien abductions. He wouldn't allow that. But who knows which was the real event? But my question is, I just want to propose this to you guys. Let me know what you think. Is it possible that these UFO swarms over these battle groups, all happening in 2019? If we discount the Nimitz, which there was a UFO swarm near a battle group, but not directly over it, as in these cases. So could that be similar to the UFO flyover? Are they trying to get our attention and get certain wheels in motion going so that our leaders will be compelled to meet with them? Could that be something that's going on? What else would explain these flyovers? I have a hard time believing that they would need to get that close to those ships to examine them or study them, if they were just kind of interested in checking them out. So what do you think, guys? What was the impetus behind the flyovers? Why did the orbs fly over those ships? Why did the pyramids fly over those ships? Was it, were they deliberately putting on a show, as I think, for some reason, possibly to compel some sort of action, or maybe to say, hey guys, look what we can do, don't mess with us, or something like that? What do you think? What do you think that whole deal was about? Let's see. Cherie says, "Alrighty then." The Bearded Jedi says, "The new whistleblower protection program gives me hope too." It gives me hope too. I think that we are going to get some whistleblowers coming forward. We've already apparently had people like Robert Salas come forward behind closed doors to talk in a closed session with the congressional subcommittee about some of this stuff. Like in the Robert Salas case, the UFO shutting down nuclear silos, which is a huge deal, right? And it's really interesting that we have similar events happen in Russia, that they also went to Russia. But instead of shutting down the nukes in the Russian silo, they started the countdown. Yeah, that's the story. That is what happened in Russia. Is that the UFOs flew over the silo, interacted with the silo, and began a launch sequence of nuclear weapons aimed at the United States. And only at the last second did they shut them down. An alarming and terrifying incident, I'm sure, that took 10 years off the life of everybody involved there. But they all have gray hair after that. And it's really interesting that in the U.S. counterpart to that incident, that they shut off our nukes. So they activated the Russian weapons and they turned off ours. So there is a theory that they did that deliberately. because we had a defensive posture where we would only use our nukes in retaliation. And the Russians had an aggressive posture where their policy was to fire first if they needed to, or if they felt like they needed to. So, so the UFOs could have been showing us the danger in both policies. The Russians, oh crap, we just started World War III, and us powerless to respond because of our defensive posture. So is that why they did that? Just to highlight the dangers of nuclear war and of nuclear weapons in general. They are certainly interested in our nuclear technology, not just our nuclear weapons, but our nuclear power plants, our nuclear powered vessels. So they're not just interested in our nuclear weapons, but they could be interested in the damage done by our nuclear technology to the planet. That is, again and again in contact cases, you see their interest in the planet. Now, I did a video a few days ago showing an alternate view where some beings told a contactee that was all a smokescreen, that was BS, and that was a false agenda and a false narrative. And they really had a more sinister purpose. However, that is an outlier case. I don't want to put too much credence in an outlier case. The bulk of the data seems to show their interest in the environment and the protection of Gaia. Yeah, they openly refer to the Earth as Gaia to various contactees. Of course, it's all mental mind-to-mind communication. I'm sure that's just the word, how it was interpreted by the contactees. But anyway, if you're just joining us, this is Jack with the Cosmic Road. We are talking about UFO swarms over USS Omaha and others. Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp just did a great show of Weaponized talking about this. So if you enjoy this content and this show, please hit like, please subscribe, and hit the bell to be notified of future videos. And please consider supporting the channel by becoming a channel member, or maybe leaving a tip in the tip jar with the super thanks feature below. That'd be awesome. Would love it. Stuff like that helps keep this channel going and keep me encouraged to keep doing this. So that'd be super appreciated. Let's see. We're reading some of your comments. They were probably trying to pick up chicks and realized the ship was a sausage fest. Probably. I'm sure that's what was going on. Let's see. What do they look like? Do you mean the guys piloting the orbs? Great question. Is that the Greys? Is that the Nordics? Were those, drones, alien drones of some sort? Or, when we talk about alien drones, you also have to consider, since many of these ships are described as being conscious and living entities unto themselves by so many contactees, could a drone have an entirely different meaning and when we're talking about UFOs? So instead of saying drone, instead of the aliens sending out a drone, they could be talking about sending out Larry, or Bob or Sue. To them that could be an individual that they are sending out. I'm just throwing that out there. That could be a thing. Because I have heard at least one experiencer say that they had a name, or maybe they gave a name to the ship that they were interacting with on a regular basis. So it wasn't Bob, it was some weird name, but yeah. Let's see. Super Crazy Movie Geek says, if a country launched a nuke, do you think the beings would just let an impact happen, or would they intervene in some way? Well, that's a great question, and the best answer I can give you is one contactee was told that in the event, they basically the beings told them, you better pray that nuclear war never happens, because if that does happen, we will step in and to intervene and stop nuclear Armageddon. But at that point, you will cease being stewards of the earth, and you'll cease being sovereigns of your own destiny. Basically, if that happens, they said the beings would take over, not necessarily in a malevolent way, but they would just take over. We would not be the authors of our own destiny anymore, according to what that contactee was told. So yeah, good news and bad news, right? We would avoid nuclear Armageddon, but we would be, subservient to our new alien overlords. So who knows if that's true? The aliens say a lot of things, guys. That's one thing you have to keep in mind, because the aliens say a lot of things. They have told people so many things, and I am really kind of obsessed with what they tell people, because I want to peek behind the curtain as much as I can. So I really study those encounters, and the beings say a lot of stuff to a lot of people, and some of it kind of comes true, some of it doesn't. A lot of it is contradictory. Like their origins, where they came from, who are they? There's so many different stories they have told people about where they have come from. And I'm not even talking about different races necessarily. Like the Greys, they've given people like 6 different versions of their origin story and how they came to be here. And they all have some commonalities, which to me is kind of alarming, because the stories are different enough to be where they're wildly different and very distinct stories. So they're not just seeing the same thing in different ways or telling the same story in different ways. But they'll say, well, we're humans from the future, or another version is we're related to humans from an alternate reality future. Another version is and in those cases, they have come here because they've messed up their genetics, or in some cases, they have messed up their spiritual connection. They are no longer spiritually connected to the higher dimensions, and they need us. They need to, reintegrate our DNA to either, well, they give many different reasons for that too, or several different reasons for that. One, to become more spiritually connected. One, simply because they've messed up their own DNA and are no longer able to reproduce themselves, and they are a dying race, and so they need us to continue on. And that seems to be and thank you very much, Rick Roberts. I really appreciate that. It's awesome. People like you really, really, really appreciate that. Really appreciate that. Super thanks. And I am super thankful. Let me get you to your question. But just to finish that point. So the aliens have given various different narratives for how they came to be here and why they are here. They seem to have some commonalities. They are weak and dying, and they need us. Basically, we have nothing to fear from them, and we are important to them. Those are the 2 commonalities that I've been able to distill from basically the 6 or 7 different narratives that are out there. So to me, that is very alarming, because they want us to think they are powerless, that they are weak, but they need us. We're so important to them. And we might be, and maybe they are powerless and weak. But to me, it smacks of disinformation. That is a false narrative put out there because they don't want us to fear them. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe they are super powerful, but they don't actually mean us harm. But they put forward this narrative so that we are not scared by them. There could be a benevolent reason for those narratives, those false narratives. What I see as false narratives. If you take what they're saying as legit, that's great. That's great. And maybe it is. Maybe that one of those 6 or 7 different narratives is the one. That is totally possible. So Rick Roberts says, do you think Eisenhower confided to Jackie Gleason about aliens? I would love to know more about the Gleason UFO connection. Yeah, me too. Well, let's see. It was Nixon, right? That took Gleason to see the beings, right? They had so the story is that Richard Nixon and Jackie Gleason, were friends. And one night, Nixon showed up in an unmarked car, just driving himself. And it came to, Gleason's door. It says, hop in. And it's like midnight. And Jackie Gleason hops in the car and they drive over to was it Wright Patterson? I want to say it was Wright Patterson. I could be getting the destination wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, if you know the story. And so Nixon took Jackie Gleason down to where they kept the stuff. They had the UFOs and they had the bodies of beings, which is something that, I've talked about before and that has been reported so many times as that, yeah, they've got bodies in places like Wright Patterson. Ross Coulthart has described Wright Patterson as a parking lot of UFOs, but they also have the bodies of the beings. And so Richard Nixon showed Jackie Gleason the bodies. And Jackie went home, and Richard Nixon had sworn him to silence. But evidently, he did tell his wife that. And she told people years later about that encounter. So there is a story about Jackie Gleason and a president, maybe not Eisenhower. I don't know of any Eisenhower Jackie Gleason stories, unfortunately. If you do, let me know. But that's my Jackie Gleason story, or that is the Jackie Gleason story that I know of. So yeah, Jackie Gleason got to see some stuff. I would love to know the full story of that. But yeah, he was sworn to silence, and he was pretty good about maintaining that. And Nixon was his friend, so he wasn't going to betray Nixon. Cherie says Thor. Super Crazy Movie Geek says bang zoom. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Super Crazy Movie Geek says I for one welcome our new alien overlords. Yeah. Let's see. Raz says they seem to show up like that as an announcement. Let us collaborate for the betterment of our combined might in a mutual way, but we want abduction victims in exchange for some of our tech. Yeah, that seems to be kind of the situation. That is the story that is out there about the Eisenhower meeting. One of the various versions of the deals that he accepted were that yes, he would allow abductions in exchange for alien technology. So let's just consider that for a moment, because I don't know which version of events is the correct one. But yeah, so the timeline of that works out really well, because as I've talked about several times in the recent videos, the ARVs appear to be real. I've gotten, 3 points of corroboration for that recently. Don Phillips, the Lockheed Martin engineer who talked about that the engineers he knew in Skunk Works working with Area 51 guys were working with the beings, making a training device so that U.S. personnel could learn to fly their own UFOs. And that was in the 60s, which is when the first reports of ARVs start to show up, the alien reproduction vehicles, the human-flown UFOs. So that's one point of corroboration for that event, for that story. Another, of course, is Mark McClandish. That's really who has popularized this idea of the ARVs. I think that term comes from Mark McClandish in his story, and I've talked about that before. And there is also John Keel, who talked about ARVs. I don't think he called them ARVs, but he talked about human-made UFOs that were seen and flown in the 60s. So that timeline works really well with the Eisenhower meeting. And, whether it was a transfer of technology for, in exchange for abductions or not, if we see the Eisenhower meeting as the beginning of this exchange of technology, working up to a few years later, the beings working with us, helping us design this trainer device so that our pilots could learn to fly our own UFOs. And then, and a few years later, the ARVs, the human-created UFOs, start appearing. And I did another video showing another example of that. That particular incident I think it was a police officer or somebody, some credible person. No, he was a Air Force guy who saw this ship come down in a. I'm getting the story wrong. Anyway, there's a credible source that saw the ship come down and a guy, I think he was wearing an Air Force uniform, come out. I think that's where the Air Force comes into it. Although the witness may well have been an Air Force person himself. I'm just talking off the top of my head here, but that was a human flying a human created nuts and bolts craft in the 1960s. So that's a fourth point of corroboration for this idea that there were human flown UFOs and human made UFOs that could do fantastic maneuvers. I don't know if they could do as fantastic a maneuver or as maneuvers as the alien or non-human UFOs, but they were pretty amazing craft flown by humans. So I think that is another point in favor of the Eisenhower meeting, is that the timeline works out really well for that. So you had the alien flyover or the non-human flyover of Washington, D.C. in 52. You had the Eisenhower meeting in 54. And by, the early 1960s, you had these Lockheed Martin Skunk Works engineers working with the beings, creating a training device. And then around that time, you start to see the human-made UFOs. So, obviously it's hard to say what is the concrete truth, but yeah, that timeline works out really well. It really does. What do you? Oh, thank you very much to Super Crazy Movie Geek. I really appreciate that. Left a super chat, and he says, or she says, I can't tell. I got to squint with the emoji. Do you think other nations could have working ARV? Yeah, I know. Okay, yeah. So that's the thing, right? So because that's an excellent question, and yeah, I was just thinking about that earlier today. Is that I have talked about. I made several videos talking about witnesses, Navy and military witnesses who were there when the U.S. military fired upon UFOs. And there have been other cases where UFOs have fired upon us and acted upon us. Well, what if that was a battle between aliens and humans than between, humans and humans? What if it was, U.S. Shooting at Russian or Chinese or, whatever created UFOs, ARVs? I think that is totally possible. Totally possible. And then you start to think about the Marconi murders in the 90s of the Marconi scientist in the Marconi company. And the Marconi company is thought to maybe possess some of the UFO material from the Mussolini UFO. Mussolini got this UFO in the 1930s. And he got, is it Albert Marconi? Am I getting that name right? The famous scientist to study it. And he had his own company, the Marconi Company, that is still extant today and still a force to be reckoned with today. The idea is that they have some of that material. Lou Elizondo says that we got the ship, or in 1945, we got whatever was left of that UFO. But could the Marconi Company have some of that technology? And could there have been some interesting, cloak and dagger sort of stuff that led to those scientists being murdered in the 90s? And some malevolent actor getting some of this technology and maybe doing something with it, maybe making their own ARVs or improving the ARVs that they already had. I think that's totally possible. I think that's totally possible. I really do. So Russian UFOs. Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense. It's logical. On the other hand, okay, counterpoint. We got to look at it from all directions. If the Russians had that technology, wouldn't they have conquered Ukraine already? But you could say that we have been able to counter their UFOs with our own crazy alien technology, right? So I don't know, guys. There's, until they come out and tell us the truth about some of this, it's so hard to say. But so many of these scenarios do make sense. So, and maybe it wasn't the Russians, maybe it was the Chinese. Of course, why haven't they taken over the world if that was the case? So, why isn't Taiwan, completely under their domain now? I don't know. I don't have an answer for you guys. I would love to learn what you think about all this. Big Mac Mick says, "Do you think aliens like our food?" I love fast food, and my favorite is buckets of chicken. Any big old, hey, nothing wrong with a bucket of chicken. Man, I became gluten intolerant about a year and a half ago, and it's a bummer, man. It really is. I can't have fried food anymore unless I make it myself with gluten-free ingredients, which just isn't as good. It's not as crunchy. It's not as good. It's kind of lame. But yeah, so they could be here for the fried chicken. Maybe that's the reason for the egg shortage. President Kennedy in 1962, the Ebens welcomed 12 astronaut-trained military personnel aboard their craft. Okay, I don't know that story. This is from Raz. JFK may have met some aliens in 1962. Okay, can you give me a link to that information? For the 10-month journey to their home planet Serpo, 39 light years away. 7 members returned after 13 years on the planet. Okay, yeah, I am familiar with the Serpo story. I love the Serpo story. It's a great story. I'm skeptical on that story because I saw the Y-Files episode of that. And I love the Y-Files, but they're so annoying because he wants to debunk everything. But it's good to get real information, and I think that's awesome. And he did provide a great video on that, walking you through that full story, the Serpo story. Really cool story, worth checking out, even if it's not true. But at the end of that video, as he tends to do, not always, but he is prone to do that, he will debunk the story that he has just presented, and he presented a pretty compelling case why that wasn't a true story. Unfortunately, because it's a great story, it really is a great story. But again, his word is not the final say in the matter. So I'm not telling you what to believe, but I was persuaded by what he said that it probably wasn't a real event, but it's a cool story. Let's see. Okay, it's been over an hour. Does anybody have any thoughts they would like to share, or any questions that you have for me or somebody else? I think I'm probably reached a good stopping point right now, but I'm happy to talk for a while longer. I got water left. None of the cats are bothering me. All right. Well, it looks like we've come to a good stopping point. But thank you very much for joining me, guys. I love having you here. Love doing these shows. I probably need to get regular on this, so when I'm going to do it, like once a week, like Linda Moulton Howell does. She has a regular time, and what is it, 7:00 Wednesday or whatever. So I probably need to do something like that. I like the afternoons personally. It may be a bad time for you guys. Some of you are probably working, but you guys that have joined me obviously are able to do this. So maybe that would be a good time. But yeah, please hit like, please subscribe, and hit the bell to be notified of future videos. Let's see, comment below. Let me know what you think about all this. Obviously, you guys have been commenting, but if you're just joining me later, let me know what you think. And please share this video when it drops on, now. And let's see, what else? Yeah, please consider becoming a channel member. There's 2 tiers, tier 1 and tier 2. Tier 2 receives exclusive videos, but either one is really appreciated, and you guys are awesome. And let's see, what else? I think that's about it. Well, yep. All right, guys. Thank you so much, and you guys have a great day, and thanks for joining me.